Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody, to our first meeting of 2023. It's wonderful to see you all, and it's great to see these one-word check-ins coming in the chat. Hello from Boston, Sarah. Hello. Are you excited, Eri? I wonder why. I'm just going to turn off that irritating sound as people arrive. Okay. Welcome, everybody. So we have a very special meeting today. It's going to be divided into two parts today. First of all, we're going to have Dr. Eri Mountbatten O'Malley presenting on an exciting new initiative called Flourish Cafe, which I can't wait to learn more about today. He's going to run the meeting for about the first 25 minutes. And then our very own director of the Flourish Network, Professor Matthew Lee, is going to take over to lead a networking session to discuss some ways to potentially expand the network all around the globe. I'll then make some announcements in the last 5 minutes of the meeting, one of which is about a new interest group we have. We have various interest groups in the Flourishing Network, for example, an entrepreneurship and flourishing interest group and various others. And a new one has been proposed by Dr. Gilda Scarf on flourishing for families. And I'm going to invite her to say a little bit about that today, an invitation to join that, and also an announcement from one of our senior fellows, Dr. Noemi Lepertel, about the next Flourish Network meeting in a month's time, which is the second symposium on economics and global well-being. Without further ado, though, it's my honor to hand you over to, in the extremely capable hands of Dr. Eri Mountbatten O'Malley, who is Senior Lecturer in Education at Bath Spa University. And he's started up an extremely exciting initiative called Flourish Cafe, which he's going to tell you all about. Now I'm going to make you the co-host, Eri. Please take it away, Eri.
Perfect. Let me just see if this is going to work all right. Can you see that all right?
Absolutely. Looks awesome.
Excellent. For some reason, it's minimized you, and I can only see mini versions of everyone. And I want to see you all in your glory. So what's going on here? There we go. I have to drag it. Okay, hang on a second.
Well, I've spotlighted you for everyone, so everyone can definitely see you.
Okay. Well, don't look at my pimples. All right, just promise me that. Thanks very much, John, for the very kind introduction, and obviously a huge honor to have your time today to be able to speak about Flourish Cafe, an exciting new venture that I've started. It's been a real journey. Just coming to the end of my PhD, I'll touch on a little bit on that. But yeah, it's very thrilling to be here amongst the great and the good, amongst the Harvard Flourishing program and community of practice that you're all doing. So you're all doing great work. So I really appreciate it today. So without further ado, let's crack on. So just to give you a little bit of an idea about the development of the idea, how it sort of came about, because I think that's sort of important. Some of you, or many of you I know already. I recognize so many faces here, but I did my PhD. It was published in 21 on human flourishing. And basically, I identified some conceptual problems in the literature on human flourishing, and really the sort of the research was sort of centered around addressing some of those conceptual issues. My background was in policy and social campaigning, so activism actually, and policy work. And so that really helped to drive my interest, if you like, in humanizing the concept of human flourishing, as I found it in the literature to potentially at least be quite, elitist, So that sort of drove my interest in the thesis, and that sort of carried on into my work later on, which I'll touch on. I'm in talks at the moment with Bloomsbury, which is fantastic, very close to getting published. So looks like it will be published, but I don't know, haven't had confirmation yet. I'm really hoping that it will be a book soon as well. So that is exciting stuff as well. So do keep an eye out for that. Some of the key insights from the PhD. So aside from some of the critical aspects, the conceptual bits that I talk about, there are some positive claims that I make as well. So if we understand human flourishing properly, then it's humanistic. Of course, it's in the title, human flourishing. It's right there in the title. So it needs to be humanistic, needs to be person-centered, and needs to be contextual, because of course we all come from very complex perspectives and conditions and histories, if you like. It needs to be agent-led. So I think that part of the reasons for, or the possibilities for human flourishing are really driven by, if you like, our enactment of our own agency and really engaging with life. And it's about developing some innate potential in terms of our human capacity. So I'll touch on that with a graph in a moment. But I think that human flourishing is the most exciting concept on the planet. I know that we're all probably a little bit biased in that because we all love this concept. But I think it really is transformative. If you understand human flourishing right, I really think it's very radical and very, very transformative and very exciting, actually. So that's a little bit of my background, if you like. So just to give a little picture, if you like, to sort of summarize some of the key insights that I talk about in my PhD. I talk about, you might be familiar with Aristotle and some of his approaches to understanding different kinds of being, etc. Well, I talk about that in the thesis as well, and so I draw on some of the insights from Peter Hacker and Aristotle and others in terms of understanding human capacities in terms of powers. So we've got rational powers, we've got moral powers, and we're also subject to various sorts of processes, whether it be biological or psychological. But what I'm most interested in, if you like, is not just our capacities as human beings, but I'm interested in this bit at the top here, the potential flowering of human flourishing, the flowering of our abilities, really through the enactment of our agency. And I think that, if we care about flourishing in a genuine sense, then we really need to think about meaningful happiness, not just well-being, but meaningful happiness and personal growth and development. And I think that these are the core ingredients of a flourishing life. And so, if you like, there's this sort of pincer movement, this tension between the innate capacities and our enacted abilities in our context and in our complex, conditions that we have, and all coming from different socio-economic circumstances and different conditions, different abilities, disabilities or abilities or whatever, and capacities. So all of that complexity, I think, is respected in a model I hesitate to call it a model, but a picture like this, if you like. And really important, building on some of the insights that Matt Lee has spoken about in terms of love as being the essence of human flourishing, which I have a lot of sympathy for. So at the bottom here, the conditions for human flourishing are really vital. And so I know that a lot of us are doing social campaigning work or social work, in trying to improve the conditions. And obviously Harvard is leading the way in many respects in that area in terms of the research side of things. So it's a very exciting thesis to be involved in and a project. And so this, if you like, has sort of led me to some insights that I think can be worked on in a community level. And that was really what I've been most interested with human flourishing, is how to really help communities to thrive. Now, I like this quote from Wittgenstein. I'm going to just read it out to you briefly. But he says, "In teaching you philosophy, I'm like a guide showing you how to find your way around London. I have to take you through the city from north to south, from east to west, from Houston to the Embankment, and from Piccadilly to the Marble Arch. After I've taken you on many journeys through the city in all sorts of directions, we shall have passed through any given street a number of times, each time traversing the street as part of a different journey. And at the end, you will know London. You will be able to find your way about like a Londoner. And of course, a good guide will take you through the more important streets more often than he takes you down the side streets. And a bad guide will do the opposite." So my if you like, my ethic and my drive in the research that I do is building on Wittgenstein is this a therapeutic approach. So I really want to be a good guide. I really want to provide something that's going to be helpful and useful in unknotting conceptual confusions and those sorts of inhibitions on flourishing. All right, so with that in mind, with that little bit of context in mind, Flourish Cafe has been born out of a few different strands of work that I've been doing. So firstly, I've been doing some public philosophy engagement. For example, this is a talk that I gave at the Institute of Social Responsibility at Edge Hill University, where members of the public, academics, got together and basically just talked about how can we create a flourishing society. The talk is up on YouTube if you can bear it. I always struggle to watch myself back on, so I can't bear it. But if you would like to, it is up there. So yeah, so that's one of the sort of public philosophy, if you like, engagements that I did. Katie Granville Chapman, that many of you know, most of you probably know, invited me to speak at the Leadership for the Greater Good event that we had in Oxford last year, where I met many of you here, including Matt and Jim in person, and others too. So so really was a fantastic event that was quite ambitious in scope. And I was, I don't know what's the right word, sort of excited, challenged by one of the projects that came out of this event, which was the Global Flourishing Goals, which I know that Matt is promoting on the website, which is fantastic. So out of some of the work that we were doing there, it got me thinking about how to really engage with people in their communities where they stand from. So as I've mentioned before, the human flourishing, I think for me, comes across as a little bit opaque, certainly conceptually confused and sort of ambiguous. And there are tendencies towards a sort of perfectionist picture, if you like, of human flourishing, which is problematic. So in the context of all the recent multiple crises that we've been having over recent years, I've been really interested in trying to think about, well, how can we actually nurture less of a top-down approach and more of a groundswell in terms of realizing what flourishing means in really just accessible terms, in everyday, ordinary language. So that's what I've been interested in. And part of it is, of course, is addressing some knowledge gaps or blind spots that people might have, you know, and confusions. So I hope to provide a space with Flourish Cafe where people can work through some of those confusions in a safe space and with others. And so that's the kind of idea that's behind it. There are a couple of aspects. So one of the aspects is supporting, if you like, the Global Flourishing Goals Initiative, which a few of us here are part of, which is a very exciting thing. The other bit is equipping a website. So there's going to be a community hub, if you like, for different resources where they can develop their own sorts of Flourish Cafes. And then the other aspect is hosting Flourish Cafes myself, or working with partners to do so. So there are a number of different sort of levels to the way that Flourish Cafe works. It's informed by a number of different methods. So obviously I'm a philosopher, so coming from that sort of field, I want to make sure that there's some philosophical insight in there. So there'll be elements, if you like, of philosophical discussion during these events, but they're very much based on dialogue and developing mutual understanding and mutual sense making. You know, so I think that getting people in a room in these sorts of spaces can be very challenging, but also very exciting and transformative. So the ultimate aim is to, if you like, contribute to personal development of the individuals that come into these events, but then to enable and equip and empower them to think about how can they then go into their communities and contribute to the greater good. And I think that's what's really exciting for me is that particular aspect. And you know, it must start with us. I think, you know, I think this sort of work that we do, many of us do, all of us here even probably do, you know, it must start with ourselves, you know. And I think that's the same sort of ethic that I want to bring to these events, is people realizing their responsibility, their moral, their social, and their personal responsibilities. And I think it has to start with us first. And as we begin to work that through, then we're better enabled to create the world, or a better world that we all want to envisage. So yeah, so I think I've covered some of those bits. So yeah, so just engaging with political representatives is also, I think, really important nowadays, bearing in mind that we've had so much political disengagement over recent years, and it's no wonder really. So exciting news. The website is actually just been launched, probably about a week ago, something like that. You may find it gets like changes done to it on a daily basis. Every time I have a thought, I'm like, okay, I need to edit it. I'll do this. I'll do this. So it's a work in progress. It's still very new, and I'm still building different sections. But you can access the website now. It is up and available at flourishcafe.org. So you'll be able to do that. So Flourish Cafe is essentially a not-for-profit social enterprise organization that's enabling communities to sort of harness flourishing for themselves. So here are some of the pilot events. I managed to get some funding from the Arts and Humanities Research Council to fund these events, which is fantastic. So we've got 3 events coming up that are going to look at various different issues. One of them is to do with social and economic exclusion within the Bath area. Some of you might know that Bath is quite an affluent part of the UK, but there are, you know, poverty spots like you have everywhere. And there's a disconnect between the communities who are impoverished and those that are wealthier. And so in order to build a more, a sense of ownership, if you like, for the more impoverished communities, we're going to be looking at that in the February event. And the other two events are sort of focused on issues around sustainability, nature, and creativity. So these are all sort of events that are on sort of current issues, if you like, on issues that are affecting the community, but then in the broader context of human flourishing. So that's the kind of key concept. Many of you will probably work in the fields of coaching and areas like that. You will be very familiar with the World Cafe as a method. Well, I've been doing World Cafe, I don't know, must be for about 10 years or so, something like that. It's an incredible method for those of you that haven't done it. It's really, really powerful, really transformative. So David Isaacs there and Juanita Brown, they've been developing the method over recent years, over the past, I don't know, 20 plus years. And the work is incredible, and they've been working with corporations, with governments, and with third sector as well. And World Cafe has become quite a popular way, certainly in the corporate sector. Not as popular in community context, I'm surprised to see, in the UK, even though the ones that I have attended tended to be in the third sector, voluntary sector, but not really widely used. And I don't know why it's not as widely used as it could be in this country, at least. Probably in the States, it's a bit more popular. So the idea really is to help to roll out the method in the UK, beginning here and then branching out internationally. There are a bunch of principles that the World Cafe method is centered around, and they involve really making an event that is bespoke to the local area, the local community, and encouraging equal contribution from everyone in the room. I've been at events and hosted events where, for example, we've had strategic decision makers from the NHS, really top decision makers that have big budgets, right next to all the way down through service workers and then service users, so people who are in need, for example, of mental health services and things like that. And it's an incredible equalizer. You sit on one table, for example, and you're sitting across big decision makers with big budgets, and you're able to connect and discuss. And it's a real eye opener for both sides, or for all sides, really, in this sort of event. So it's really quite powerful and transformative. And so I've been a huge fan of it, and so it's been very exciting to develop that as part of my work on flourishing. There's music, there's coffee. And it's just a relaxed environment, but some of the if you like, the most important aspects of a World Cafe event are really about harvesting the emerging themes and the emerging wisdom that comes out from the discussions that happen on the tables, and drawing that out. And so there's a lot of skill in the host being able to draw that out from participants at these sorts of events. And I've got various different sort of tools and methods that I use to help to do that, as well as using, of course, graphic artists as well. So I've got some of the best graphic artists working with me on Flourish Cafes. So they're going to be able to capture the emerging wisdom in a single graphic from the event. And so participants will have that to take home with them as well. So that's really exciting. Okay, so for those of you that haven't seen this sort of thing, this is roughly, I suppose, what it might look like. Brainstorming, mind mapping, sense making, all of that sort of stuff, storytelling, narrative, all of that sort of, using different aspects of your creative capacities, your emotional, your artistic, your creative, as well as your cognitive and your intellectual, all coming together. So that's the idea of this sort of event. So just giving you some images to sort of highlight how that might work. So this is a sort of typical, if you like, graphic artistry that you might get from this sort of event. It sort of captures all the sense making from the event. And some of you will have seen this sort of thing before. But, there are other ways to do these sorts of images as well that are just incredible and artistic. And Viola Clark is my partner on a couple of the events, and she's just brilliant. Okay, so I've got a list of partners to showcase. So firstly, my pilot event partners are here. So that's Dr. Victoria Foster. She works with creative pedagogies and arts for social justice. Dr. Blenna Hassett is going to be working with Victoria and myself on that event at Edge Hill. And she works in nutrition and well-being. Penny Hay is well known for her work in creative pedagogies and is a big voice. She was a former friend of Ken Robinson. Some of you might have seen his TEDx, and she's still friends with the family there. And keeps in touch with them and promotes really alternative education, transformative education, and those sorts of things. So, I know Penny very well by now, and we're good friends. Ruby Sant is a TEDx speaker as well, actually, but a local one. She spoke at the TEDx last year in Bath. So she's actually a roboticist, so she builds robots out of recycled materials and things like that. But she's also a community activist, and so she's the one that I'll be working with in the impoverished area in Bath to help to sort of promote a sense of belonging and well-being in that area as well. And I've also got some wider partners, if you like, that aren't yet committed to an actual event, but are supportive of the organization, are supportive of Flourish Cafe, and where we're sort of thinking about how we can possibly develop events in the future at sort of phase 3, once it starts to roll out a bit more globally. So Dr. Simon Duffy, I've known him for many years, actually. He's the president of Citizen Networks, one of the largest citizen networks in the world. Host of organizations that work with them on all sorts of grassroots activism, democracy work, all that sort of stuff. Obviously, Professor Matt Lee needs no introduction here. So all of the amazing work that he's done here at Harvard and now at Baylor, very grateful to know and have the support from Matt. Dr. Katie Granville Chapman, who I met last year in Oxford. She wants to do some work at the school that she's working at, so I'll probably be working with her on an event at some point soon. And Claire Goodridge, I don't know if you know her, John, but she's part of the Flow Collective, and so she's been absolutely fantastic in helping me to develop the website and just being a sounding board of different ideas as well. And so she works in Flow consultancy and coaching and all that sort of area as well. So an absolute fantastic array, if you like, of wonderful people helping me on this journey with Flourish Cafe. So just a few quotes. I won't read it all, but I'll just read a few snippets, if you like. The arts and humanities are so important in all of our lives, and we need to share and celebrate their transformational potential. This is an opportunity to work together to ensure that everyone flourishes, no matter their background or circumstance. That's from Penny. Matt said something lovely here as well. Aries Flourish Cafe project has significant potential to make some long-term meaningful moves in that direction and more. I wholeheartedly support it and look forward to engaging with Aries in due course, which is lovely. Thank you so much, Matt. A quote from Simon as well. He says, Citizen Network is excited to support the development of Flourish Cafe. Too often governments and businesses and bureaucracies impose shallow systems of value on us, which I totally agree with. As citizens, we need the opportunity to explore what is meaningful to ourselves and our communities. And we look forward to working, supporting the development of Flourish Cafe and sharing the concept with our global membership. So my work with Simon is ongoing, and we're looking at how we can partner up in due course. I've also been in touch with the lovely people at the World Cafe Community Foundation. I've recently completed the course in the hosting fundamentals, just to as a brush up, and also just to connect with the really practitioners from across the world in terms of World Cafe. And they've been very supportive and really kind as well. So fantastic support from them. And that's it, really, I suppose. So that's a real sort of snapshot of Flourish Cafe and what it can do. And these are just some of the impacts and what I hope to do really over time in terms of building the capacity of the website and building its potential. That's the old logo there, by the way. Just something I'd like to flag, which is I don't know if anyone has heard of, but the Time to Change campaign that happened in the UK. I think it finished a few years ago. Right now, it's very trendy, isn't it, to talk about mental health, and everyone doesn't mind talking about it. There's a lack of stigma about it now, but it's really thanks to these guys, really, that has really happened at all. So Time to Change had a huge and successful campaign, campaigning to tackle the stigma of mental health and encouraging people to come forward. And they just their work, and actually I think one of my first World Cafes was at a Time to Change event. And they're just incredible. So I think if I can emulate something like the sort of impact that they've had, I would be, just really delighted in terms of helping to bring flourishing to communities. That would be really wonderful. So in terms of phases, we've got these seed events that, as I showed earlier, there's going to be a learning period where I actually reflect and report on some of the different techniques that I've used at the different events and the different partners and all these different things. So sort of learning phase, if you like. And then I'll be looking to upscale and go global. So I'll be open to discussions, and if anyone wants to hear more, then that would be brilliant. Yeah, so one of the other things is that the flourishing, the Global Flourishing Goals initiative, the way that this can support, I think, some meaningful change in society, is, I think, really exciting as well. So that's just a slide just to sort of highlight that there are other things happening that that different groups are doing, and I'm part of some of it, and etc. It's all sort of working towards bringing human flourishing to communities and to the global policy agenda. So very, very excited about all of this. If this excites you a little bit, or you're curious, I hope you are. There are a few ways that you can support Flourish Cafe. So firstly, it's as an affiliate, which is to provide a statement of support on the website. Secondly, you can think about supporting either someone else to do an event, or you can support, for example, us to fund a community event. So for those that can't afford it, the grant that I have at the moment is only funding the pilot. So I will be looking, and I'm looking at applying for new pots for the next phase, if you like. But if you're interested in supporting people in your community and access to some funds, and you think that might be helpful, then do get in touch. And the main sorts of funds are for catering, things like that, catering, event hire, and for the payment of the graphic artist, for example, and they're not cheap. If alternatively, obviously, you can get involved with me directly in terms of partnering up on an event. That would be really exciting, and I'd be very, very happy to talk further about that. I will be developing an advisory group over time that can help to inform the development of Flourish Cafe and how it happens. And of course, you can promote Flourish Cafe to your networks and within your networks. So I think that's pretty much it. Is that my last slide? Oh yeah. So to finish on a quote from Ramu, and Ramu Damodaran, who is a former UN official, and I had a very long chat with him in the summer whilst I was on holiday. And I have to probably give him the biggest credit for actually giving me the courage to do this. So this is what he had to say. He said, "It is time we restored to the majority the capacity to truly live, to flourish, to thrive, and not just survive. This will involve imagination and practical action arising from the exhilaration of shared ideas. Erie's Flourish Cafe can offer a venue for hearts and minds to engage with each other, with institutions and with organizations, with governments and business, to help fashion a future worthy of our times, a future that will flourish." That's me done. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Eri. Please, everyone, click on the virtual round of applause on your reactions, or put your hands together and just give Eri a round of applause, or do both. It certainly merits both those. Eri, that was fantastic. There's loads of questions in the chat for you, and expressions of support. If we have some time at the end, everyone, I will open the floor for some actual questions where you can unmute your mic and ask Eri. Eri, if you want to stop sharing your screen now, because we can.
Yeah, sorry, let me do that now.
Your wonderful camping photo. Yeah, I'll try and make some time at the end for some questions. But in the meantime, please put them in the chat. And I've put Eri's website and information on Flourish Cafe in the chat. And hope you don't mind me, Eri. I shared your email address there in case we don't have time for questions. Please put them in there, and I'm sure Eri will be able to reply to you via the art of the written word. Whilst we now move on to the second part of this session. So our very own director of the Flourishing Network, Matthew Lee, Professor Matthew Lee, who of course needs no introduction, is now going to lead a networking session on expanding the global reach of the network. And here's just I'll read out a brief blurb that was circulated in the email. The Flourishing Network is now approaching its 5th year. Congratulations and thank you to everyone who has contributed to the vibrancy and impact of our collaborations. This year, we are likely to have some opportunities to further expand the global reach of our work, and especially to learn from scholars in the global south. And Matt is now going to lead a conversation about some of these possibilities, and I'll share some more info in the chat. So Matt, I hand over to your very capable hands now.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Eri. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I apologize that I haven't been able to attend the last few meetings, and so glad that John has been able to lead us forward. I've been traveling far too much, and got a signal yesterday that maybe it's time to stop. I had 5 flights canceled yesterday, trying to get from Texas to California. And the last flight, we actually pulled away from the gate for about 5 minutes. And whenever the pilot comes out, it's a bad sign. So he came out to break the news to us that they were not going to be de-iced in time, and we're heading back to gate. So anyway, I'm glad that my busy travel season comes to an end with that exclamation mark yesterday. So I didn't make it to my event today, but looking forward to really focusing this year on the network as really at the core of what I'll be doing for the next few years. And so, I just wanted to start by just expressing gratitude for all of the ways that you all have contributed to our various interest groups, to these monthly meetings, and really to the building of friendships that go on. And I see it in many different ways, independent of these Zoom meetings and some of the work of the interest groups. So I know that meaningful friendships have been established, and we have said since the beginning, adopting a motto from one of the colleges at the University of California, Santa Cruz, that we're interested in the pursuit of truth in the company of friends. And we feel that we pursue truth more deeply if we are in virtuous friendship relationships. And so I wanted to share just my gratitude, a little sense of where the network might be going in collaboration with other networks, and with some possibilities for funding moving forward, and how that funding might be deployed most strategically. So I think it's helpful for us to step back and ask the question, what is flourishing? And of course, as you know, the Harvard Human Flourishing Program has a range of measurement tools at the individual, at the group, and even at the spiritual level to assess different facets of flourishing. And flourishing is not reducible to any of these measurement tools. As you've probably heard me say on a number of occasions, the best things in life are transcendent. They can't be named. Second best are mythical. You try to use metaphors and other tools to try to capture the transcendent. And then the third best are empirical. And so empirical is not worthless, it's just not first best. And so we learn a lot from empirical assessment, but ultimately we want to bring the rigorous methods of social science into dialogue with the deep wisdom of the humanities. And there's something that is not reducible to, for example, quantitative measurement, but even qualitative measurement that human beings often discuss when they are having a conversation about flourishing or some related construct. The word flourishing, as we're learning, does not work well with all groups in the United States, where the program is based, or with groups in other countries where the word doesn't seem to resonate or there's no direct translation. So I was in Spain last week for a few events, and one of our conversation partners there said, well, maybe fullness of life would be, we could translate that into Spanish better than flourishing, or integral development. So, we're very interested in learning from a variety of groups around the world about what either flourishing or fullness of life or some of these other things might mean. And so that's one of the things that we're going to do at some point this year, maybe with funding starting in August, but maybe already before we get the funding. But I did want to offer in the chat box a little bit of text about how I'm seeing the word flourishing. And this aligns, I think, for the most part with how others in the program are seeing it. But we haven't actually been able to sit down and sort all this out. So some of the language comes from others. But so this is what we seem to be saying as we have been at times misunderstood about what flourishing might encompass. And so unlike well-being, wellness, happiness, subjective well-being, other kinds of constructs, flourishing is more multidimensional, multi-level. And so flourishing, and this is Tyler Vanderweel and Tim Lomas recently publishing on this idea, quote, the relative attainment of a state in which all aspects of a person's life are good. It's moving away now. That's what happens when people post in the chat box. In which all aspects of a person's life are good, including the context in which that person lives. So it's not just about the individual, it's the individual receiving from their context, giving to their context. And these contexts, so that's the end of the quote, these contexts could include social, ecological, and spiritual domains. A short definition that we've used in the past is complete well-being, but sometimes I find it works better to talk about it in terms of wholeness amidst adversity, because you can't maximize all of these domains all the time. If everything's going well, maybe you have a better chance of that. So flourishing, though, is not the absence of suffering, but working creatively with the positive and negative aspects of life. And of course, there's the non-dualists who say that that's a faulty way of carving life up. And we can have some interesting conversations about that. But in ways that integrate the 5 individual domains that Tyler offered in his 2017 article, which has been the basis for a lot of our conversations, and other domains that are of value. So for example, for religious people, religious domains, and Tyler and colleagues have generated a measure of spiritual well-being that can be used as a template across a number of traditions. So this is all just sort of background about what we've been talking about. And then, you know, as you might know from cross-cultural research, in some parts of the world, there's more of an emphasis on harmony and balance than you sometimes see in some of the constructs that have come out of the United States and Europe. And so harmony and balance, and even more of a collectivistic way of understanding flourishing, so that we're not centering the individual, but we're centering kind of a network of relationships. So the idea that all flourishing is mutual. So this is a very fruitful and necessary conversation for us to expand beyond our boundaries. And, you know, I think we have something in the neighborhood of 300 members of our email list, and some are able to attend these monthly meetings. Others are involved in the interest groups, or some are involved in both. And some just watch the videos because the time zone is a problem. And so, you know, that's one of the problems that we would like to solve with some support from at least one foundation and possibly several this year. We want to be able to host meetings in other time zones. I know we've got friends from Japan and Australia who join us at, you know, really difficult times. And so we want to be able to have probably, it's not clear exactly how this will work out, but a number of hubs around the world that are hosting these kinds of conversations. And the idea is not to impose the conceptual ideas that I just shared with you, but to start with, okay, what would be the right word or set of words that would capture the fullness of life? Maybe well-being works, you know, in translation somewhere better than flourishing. We're not dogmatic about things. The word is just pointing to something, and we care about what it's pointing to. So if we need to use a different word, you know, we can do that. We feel that in our conversations, flourishing as a word seems to suggest healthy growth, not cancer, which is runaway growth, and not just you know, hedonistic forms of happiness and more limited, you know, numbers of domains and dimensions. So flourishing to us seems to work reasonably well, but it doesn't necessarily work for everyone. So we want to be able to host conversations, and I could see Aries Cafe as being a great venue for this. It is likely that we will offer some ad hoc stipends to people within the network or beyond who are able to host some of these things, particularly in the global South. And so what we might want to do is to start with a conversation where we don't define whatever word makes sense from our standpoint, but it's more of a listening opportunity. And then at some point, offer the framework at some point in that conversation that might unfold over several weeks or months. And then say, to what extent is the framework that we've developed consistent or inconsistent with the conversation that has emerged? So as Ari and others on the Zoom know, we also have a process of promoting what we're calling the flourishing goals. And UNESCO has taken this up, and we're having some conversations about how to start a conversation about flourishing goals more from the grassroots ground up. We've got this kind of deductive research project, the Global Flourishing Study, which many of you are familiar with, aims to collect data in 22 countries around the world with 240,000 individuals and follow them up annually for 5 years, which is really unprecedented in terms of the heavy lift that Gallup, the polling firm, is involved with. And I think they're finding it difficult already. But so, we've got this idea that we're testing, and that's kind of a deductive approach, but we want this to be more of an inductive approach. And then it aligns with this conversation about the flourishing goals, which governments could offer to populations to have more citizen involvement, or non-government organizations could offer this. And so, we have sort of an interest in informing policy with more of a nuanced understanding of what flourishing or some related concept might mean to a local population. And so how do we disseminate all of these frameworks and all of these possibilities is really the question before us. And so when I think about what might be the next iteration of the Flourishing Network, I think we will continue with everything that we've been doing, and there's no reason to stop any of it. But I think we will also find ways to partner with other networks so that we have networks of networks connecting. And I think we'll have some help to do that. So if you have particularly good connections, especially in the global South, and have some interest in helping with this work, just send me an email and in a few sentences, let me know what you're thinking. And, I will in advance apologize for my slow email response. With all the traveling and everything, I've now got close to 700 unread messages in my inbox, but my travel season should be coming to a close here. And I will have more time to attend to this. So bear with me while I sort through the backlog and then respond to anything you might share. But I really am deeply interested in figuring out ways that we can host conversations in parts of the world that 10 o'clock Eastern time is not, conducive to. So I think there's a couple things that come out of this. One is in the 22 countries where the Global Flourishing Study is being conducted, Tim Lomas, who's one of our colleagues at the Human Flourishing Program, would like to establish research satellites. And these are groups of scholars based in
I don't know if it's just me, but Matt, I've lost your audio again. Is it just me, or are you guys also lost? Yeah, there's nods. So Matt, it might be what happened earlier. It went for like a moment and then came back.
I've been hearing,
and you're back.
Okay.
Yep.
I have no idea what but 5 canceled flights, technical difficulties. It's all telling me to slow down, right? That's the message. So, these research satellites would involve scholars who would comment on the findings that we're getting from the initial wave of the Global Flourishing Study that we should have in May, and also invite scholars to use the data. The data are available to everybody. So use the data, maybe connect the data, because there are geographic identifiers with local data sets, national data sets in the specific countries. And then, give us feedback about what we're missing and how we could add some new questions in a future iteration. And so we're calling those research satellites. And again, that's starting with working with the framework that we already have and the set of questions, and then building out from there. And then the other way is to have these hubs, which we would start with more of an inductive grassroots approach. Let me just see if there's anything else that I wanted to start with. I do want to introduce Jan if he is here. Jan, if you can.
Yeah, he is here.
Jan, yes, welcome. So we need lots of partners to host these conversations, and I've just been delighted to get to know Jan for, I don't know, at least a year, maybe longer at this point, and was delighted with some others to co-host a workshop for the Inner Development Goals Summit. And there's just such great alignment with the work of the IDGs and the Human Flourishing Program and the Sustainable Development Goals and so many other initiatives, corporate social responsibility, and all of these movements, which in my view really require the development of the person, kind of our own inner development, so that we have the motivation and capacity to work on these large scale projects. And so I've been delighted to get to know Jan and to announce that he's now joining us as a senior fellow in the network, and that we have some things planned to help expand the network, including hosting a workshop in person at the Inner Development Goals Summit this year in Stockholm. And that is a way for us to draw people from around the world into a conversation without a travel budget, since we don't have much of a travel budget for this expansion. We have a little bit, but not a whole lot. So Jan, welcome. I'd be delighted if you would just say a little bit about yourself and about the IDGs, maybe 5 minutes or so, just so people can get to know you, and more collaborations to come.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for that excellent reflection introduction. So my name is Jan. I'm calling in from Sweden, Stockholm. I've been teaching at Stockholm School of Economics, leadership, and working with the Oak Island Foundation for more than 10 years. And we have been trying to promote human flourishing, adult development, mindfulness, self-compassion, and other techniques on human development at broad scale in Sweden and globally. And I'm very happy to see Suzanne Cook-Reuter here, who is one of our senior advisors and been with us from the start. And we've been able to involve many senior leaders and researchers from around the world, like Amy Edmondson, Bob Keegan, Peter Senge, Otto Scharmer, Jennifer Garvey-Berger, many others, where we talked about how can we popularize human flourishing and get more organizations and governments to really apply the science and the knowledge that is out there. How can we close the knowing-doing gap? And 2 years ago, we initiated another foundation or non-for-profit that is open source and called the Inner Development Goals. I think you all are familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals and the 17 boxes and symbols that represent somehow the map of where we would like to go globally that all countries have signed. What you might not know is that it's a Swedish design firm that has been working on that communication language. And of course, they have been frustrated that we all agree that this is where we're going to go, and we're not making enough progress. So we came together with more than 1,000 experts and scientists, and we had a co-creative process and said, could we create a framework that helps simplify human development in the same way that we have done with the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and just point to some human skills and areas of human development. So we created a framework called the Inner Development Goals, and we have been hosting summits in Sweden. Our last summit had more than 5,000 people online. We were about 800 people in person. We think we will be able to double that in 2023, where Matt will be one of the presenters in collaboration with the Human Flourishing Program. And we, of course, want to invite you to join, to co-create with us. We have very many global experts, scientists, participants coming together both in Stockholm and digitally. We will also be working on and collaborating closely, I hope, with Matt and Jon and the team on the hubs and research nodes and so on, because our purpose is working mainly through big organizations and governments. So we have organizations like Google, like IKEA, like Spotify, Ericsson, who have been funding and working with the framework and with us from the start on a very high level, usually vice president, president, or sometimes chair or owner. And we have the first country that has signed and is about to implement the framework is Costa Rica. And we have 6 more countries who are interested in policy development and working with, at large scale, applying and implementing the methods we know have positive effects on large systems. So here we also hope to collaborate with many of you in the countries and in the big organizations, and we're trying to build an ecosystem and collaborating closely with the experts in this network and in other networks. So you will get through Matt, I guess, an invitation, and of course better or free tickets digitally to join for the summits. And we also hope you who know a lot about human flourishing or related subjects would like to help us in the 6 countries. We're working closely with Colombia, with Rwanda, with India, and a few others. Maybe also contribute to the countries or cities in their implementation of human flourishing. I think that's my 5 minutes, Matt. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And so I guess the excitement here is that great things have been happening on parallel tracks, and we're starting to figure out ways that we might link arms and, you know, pursue truth in the company of friends, as I alluded to earlier. And so, you know, again, this is really, as we approach our 5th year, I think in April, this network will be 5. You know, how do we partner in these ways to really, you know, as Jan was saying, there's dissatisfaction with the lack of progress on the Sustainable Development Goals and other things, and so what's needed to move us forward. So we're happy to be partnering with the IDGs in a variety of ways that will continue to unfold. And this is just one example of how we might connect with other large networks that are doing things around the world. So thanks so much, Jan, for joining us. And I know, John, we need 5 minutes for announcements here at the end. Again, reach out to me by email if you have any thoughts or reactions to this new possibility. As I said, we hope the funding will be in place by August. There might be some things we can do prior to then without funding, but thank you and stay tuned.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. And Matt invited those of you questions then or who would like to get involved to email him, and you'll have seen in the email that I sent out that his email address was visible in the CC, so you can find it there. Okay, this is fantastic. Please do feel free to post your questions or comments in the chat, and I'll save that chat and disseminate it afterwards. So your questions will reach the recipient no matter what. I'd like to now give some time to Dr. Gilda Scarf, who is a mental toughness expert, to announce the inauguration of a new interest group that she's setting up on flourishing for parents and families. I'll type some info about that and about Gilda into the chat. But Gilda, please share your invitation to this wonderful new interest group.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, John, and Matthew as well, for the opportunity to bring a new interest group. I felt that it was a bit of a gap. I work with lots of schools and families, and I feel that it's somehow a little bit neglected, that part. And I suppose when I read the study done by Harvard University in 2019 about revealing the people's relationship with the parents and the robust and positive influence into emotional, psychological, and social well-being, I thought it's really important to have an interest group, partly because the past research on childhood antecedents of health has focused very much on identifying risk factors for illnesses such as parental neglect or parental abuse. In comparison, I would like to concentrate on positive factors which may help promote health and well-being in later life, and really establish the relationship between a parent and a child, and how can we look at and support parents to flourish in order to support their children to flourish. So the idea of the group is to translate research into practice. I would like to get a series of TED Talk styles and masterclasses and events to improve outcomes from all parents and families. So I would love to invite you all to join my group. We'll put some details, John will put some my contact details in there, and I will send you further information in the next few days. Thank you very much, John and Matthew.
Amazing. Thank you very sorry. Amazing. Thank you very much, Gilda, for sharing info on that. And I've also put all of that in the chat and Gilda's website and email address. Last but certainly not least, I don't know if Noemi is here. Let me just search in the attendees. Okay, no, I don't think she's here today. Interrupt me, Noemi, if you are here. But just information on our next meeting. So we usually meet on the final Tuesday of every other month from 10 to 11 a.m. ET. And in the intervening months, members of the network are very welcome to propose to run a meeting of some kind. So in the next month, for example, one of our senior fellows, Dr. Noemi Lepertel, has proposed to run the second symposium on the economics of well-being and global flourishing. She ran one of these last July, and it was extremely successful. And so now she's going to run the second of these. I shared some information on that in my email today, and I'll share some more in an email following this meeting in the coming days. A note that this symposium will last longer than our usual meetings. It will be 90 minutes long, so it'll be from 10 till 11:30 a.m. ET. We hope you can join us for all of it, and it's on the final Tuesday in February, which I believe is the 28th. A few other things to share in the chat today. So the Human Flourishing Program, let me just also share a bit of info on Noemi as well. There you go. It's in the chat now. There's Noemi's webpage at Shine Harvard. That's a sustainability and health initiative for net positive enterprise at Harvard. A few other things. Tyler Van der Weel, Program Director of the Human Flourishing Program, recently wrote a year in review for 2022 for the Human Flourishing Program. There's that link there. There's a seminar series at the University of Oxford every Tuesday this term at 5 p.m. GMT, 12 p.m. Eastern time. The next one is today. I've shared some info in my email. Here it is. I'm involved with that. If you're in the UK, you're very welcome to join us in person at St. Antony's College, Oxford. And if you're not in the UK, or if you can't make it, you can join us on Microsoft Teams every Tuesday until mid-March. Finally, I recently wrote an essay for the Human Flourishing Program's Medium page, and here it is. It's on resilience and buoyancy. I'd love to hear any thoughts. You have any comments, please do email me. You've got my email address. Okay, I think that is everything for today. Matt, any final announcements to make?
No, just gratitude that everyone is showing up so beautifully to advance the work of flourishing, or whatever it might be called in some other language. We seek to share the fullness of life with each other.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. So thank you very much to our speakers today, Eri, Matt, and also to Gilda for making an announcement about the new interest group, and to Jan, warm welcome from all of us as one of our new senior fellows. feel free to post an exit message in the chat as you leave. Otherwise, this adjourns our first meeting of the year. Thank you for showing up so wonderfully today, for your brilliant comments and questions. And we're very much looking forward to seeing you in a month's time or perhaps sooner. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Matt.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Jan. Thanks, Gilda.
Hey, John, do you have a second?
Yeah,
I just want to touch base.
sure thing.